guess looking like more globally, I think every company, every individual, every organization really has to do as much as we can right now to improve the carbon emissions and the carbon footprint of our industry. Like the Earth is literally on fire, and everyone kind of has to get involved. So on the good side, government's making more regulation and requirements from brands to be more sustainable. And I think specifically in our advertising space, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of education and realization that even just the amount of energy it requires to power the internet is equal to or more than the energy required by the global aviation industry. And that was kind of like this jumping off moment for our industry. Like, wow, we realized all the servers and data providers and everything that we have requires a ton of energy. And so the good news is, unlike maybe aviation or other industries, we have a lot more control over our kind of full scope of emissions as an industry. And there's a lot more we can do compared to other industries to very quickly reduce our emissions and hopefully actually get to net zero. So it's really been exciting to see the industry not just bury our heads in the sand and be like, oh, that's a big problem, I hope someone figures it out, but there's a lot of both individual companies and trade groups really getting involved to make a bigger difference. And at Sharethrough, that's where we did not just see this as an opportunity, we saw this as we have to do something about it. It wasn't a question of do we do something? It's we have to. Once we know this information, we have to do something. So we've also kind of been trying to think both locally within Sharethrough, how do we reduce our emissions, and made our own commitments to reach net zero emissions, but then also how do we empower the rest of the industry to do that through things like education, through events we're running, through writing, through research, but also through scalable products that help advertisers very easily reduce their emissions. And I think that's the main thing across any industry you look at, that the easier you make it for a consumer to make a sustainable choice, the more likely they are to do that. And the same thing is true in advertising. If you can just make it as simple as possible for buyers and planners to just run the same ads the same way they're used to doing, but make them more sustainable and make it easier for them to do that, they're going to do that. And so that's been our focus as a company, is trying to empower the rest of the industry to be able to make those changes as quickly and easily as possible.
Now you're working with Net Zero, the nonprofit, and helping publishers become to achieve zero emission. Tell us about the program that's in place.
Yeah, so we've seen even this last couple of years, we've seen ad agencies are definitely taking a stance on sustainability. You're seeing it more in their RFIs. They're starting to prioritize partners that are making more commitments to be sustainable. You're seeing it from ad tech companies like us and a number of other ones, and they're making moves. There's still a lot of room to grow. On the publisher side, there's been slower adoption to reduce emissions, and rightfully so. I mean, they're under a lot of pressure already to have squeeze as much revenue as they can out of their sites, and usually that comes from having more ads on sites. But there is a good equilibrium in there, and so what we've been trying to think about is what is something we can do to help catalyze that movement and accelerate sustainability in the publisher space. And a big way to get there for any organization is to make an official commitment to reach net zero emissions. And we just went through that process where we worked with this company, 51 to Carbon Zero, who helps measure, understands our whole company, our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, so that we can create a plan to reach net zero emissions and then officially make that commitment through science-based target initiatives. So we went through that process. It was really amazing learning experience, but also realized it takes a lot of education learning to get there. So what we decided to do was launch the Net Zero Publisher Program, where we basically will pay for the first year of measurement for a publisher to basically get their house in order and understand their emissions so they can create a plan to eventually reach net zero emissions and make that official commitment to that. And so we're saying that we'll pay for that first year of measurement through 51 to Carbon Zero so they can make their official commitment, and then we're creating a marketplace, a PMP, of publishers that have are saying they're going to reach net zero emissions by a certain year, so that advertisers can then prioritize those publishers that are making those commitments. So kind of create the cyclical loop that advertisers are going to prioritize those publishers that are doing more to reduce their emissions.
And you're organizing a big conference where I'm sure a lot of the publishers and others in the ecosystem will be in New York, the Green Summit. Tell us about that and what you hope to achieve.
Yeah, so in 2023 we ran the first ever Green Media Summit. We were trying really to bring together kind of all parts of the advertising supply chain, everyone that's involved in generating emissions. And it ended up being just a smashing success, like even bigger success than we even expected. It was a 8-hour-long, standing room only, so much participation and excitement and energy out of it. So this year in 2024, we're going to be running it on April 11th, and grew to a bigger space. We're at the green rooftop of the Javits Center. And last year was a lot about education, and this year is still some education, but really much more action-oriented. And we're trying to bring together both climate experts. Seth Godin's going to be speaking, who helped write the Carbon Almanac from like more of a global perspective. But then we're having a panel with all the major holdcos talking about as their agencies, what are they doing to both prioritize sustainability, but also what they need from the rest of the industry to improve this sustainability, since they have so much buying power. But then also having publishers speak. We're having a lot of brands come. We have HSBC and Mars and a few others that are going to be talking about their initiatives towards becoming more sustainable and how it relates to advertising. So kind of really helping bring everyone together to actually make solutions. And then last year there was a big call for just better standards in carbon measurement in digital advertising. So we're going to have a panel with kind of the key stakeholders that are creating those standards and making sure that we can actually make some movement in that space, since that's been a huge ask from the advertising community.